This is something we're going to do here pretty consistently throughout the course of this season because I don't know if y'all been keeping track of new college football playoff format. So there is going to be a G5 team now that punches their ticket and ends up being in the dance. So if you're a college football fan and you're like, yeah, I could kind of take or leave action, can't do that anymore. Yeah, I kind of want to pay attention to the Fun Belt. Again, you're lost, but can't do that anymore. College football sickos, make sure you're subscribed right here. This is a video about who's going to make the college football playoff from the G5. If you're watching this, you're a little bit sick and you're just like us. So we appreciate you for that. Thank you in advance for being subscribed to this college football sicko community. So to make sure we're all aligned on the same page here, this new segment, the 12 seed, with the man, the myth, the legend, Swiss Army knife, consistently in the background here of the hard count. Now on the air with us, my man Caden Smith. Caden, what's up, brother? I'm glad to have you here. This is dope.
Yes, sir, JD. It's been a long time coming. I'm excited to be here. I know we've been talking about this for a while, and we're finally making it happen. I know there's a lot of Power 5 football to talk about, Power 4 rather, this upcoming season, but this Group of 5 definitely has a lot of exciting stuff that I can't wait to chop it up about.
Dude, and we're here. It's funny because like I'm looking at this camera and you're right off to my right, so I'm going to try and not be too weird for the folks on YouTube consistently looking off to my right. But dude, this is awesome. And also, we're not just going to someone who like likes to watch G5 football and like every now and then tunes in. Like this dude's from it. Like played football at App State. Knows not just the Sun Belt, but knows everything that has to do with the G5 world. Man, let's just get right to it. Boise State, they're the betting favorite. You buying or selling the Broncos when it comes to like actually being a contender to be in the college football playoff as a 12 seed?
I'm buying the Broncos, JD. I think they're a favorite for the reason, and I think their whole season really kind of hinges on that quarterback position. They had a battle between Malachi Nelson, the former 5-star at USC, but Maddox Madison ended up winning that battle, and this is a guy who played in 9 games last year for this team when Taylor Green was looking a little bit rocky to start the season. Then he goes on to have a season-ending injury there to end the season, so he couldn't even compete in this battle in the spring, but then he comes in, wins that starting job in fall camp, and he has probably the best weapon behind him in Ashton Jeanty at the Group of 5 level, maybe even the entire country when you look at a versatile running back who was a 1,000-yard rusher. He had second in this team when it comes to receiving last year. So he has all the weapons. I think their offensive and defensive line might be the best in the entire Group of 5. So everything is set up for this team to be successful. I think it all just hinges on Madsen. And I think you look to have a great opportunity early in the season. Week 2 going to Oregon, that's going to be a tough matchup. Week 1, you can't overlook going to Georgia Southern as well. That's going to be a tough environment. But I think beyond that, you look at their schedule, pretty easy when it comes to Mountain West terms. And when you look at their schedule, they have to go to UNLV after a trip to Hawaii, which is probably going to be their toughest break there, but they avoid Air Force. They avoid playing Fresno State. So I think when you look at their schedule overall, their makeup of their team, a lot's going to hinge on that quarterback position, but I think they're very well poised to be 11-1, and they're going to play a hard team in their conference championship game. This is a team that a conference that produced 9-win teams, I think 4 of them last year. So I think when you look at them, they're poised, they'll be ready to go, but it's going to be about that quarterback position.
How much do you think we have to wait? Because you mentioned the game against Oregon early. Like if I am the college football playoff committee, some part of me feels like, hey, they played a Power 4 team. Even if they didn't win that game, that probably is like a helpful data point. And everyone hates the word like quality loss and eye test. But for Boise State, I'm like, if you go toe-to-toe with Oregon, let's say they lose that game by 10 points, I'm like, hey, maybe that should factor in a little bit for the Broncos. I know they're the betting favorite, but like that should probably be something we look at for them as a data point if they do end up being on that doorstep of being a college football playoff team as let's call it a 2-loss conference champ or something in that range.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think when we talk about these 7 teams who I think have that best shot to be in there, a lot of them play teams that are top 25 ranked in the country. And you talk about close losses, maybe not counting in terms of Power 4 production and what you use for the eye test of who makes this tournament. But I think when you look at the Group of 5, it's going to be a huge barometer. We saw what Liberty looked like last year against Oregon, losing 45-6, and they didn't have any Power 4 teams on their schedule last year or this year. So to me, Florida State kind of set the precedent here a little bit. Sorry, Seminoles fans, but maybe the record doesn't always matter as much as the eye test overall in college football. But I think specifically in the Group of 5, we're going to have the opportunity to see some of these top teams go toe-to-toe on the road against some of the top Group of 5 Power 4 teams in the nation. And I think Boise State's one of the ones, many of the teams that have the opportunity to really make some noise, even with a close loss if they aren't able to pull out that upset win.
And you and I were like, we've been like tinkering with this segment for a while now. Like we've been talking like, hey, when's the best time to do it? Like how often do you want to do it? And like whenever we've been tinkering with this, we always get around to like, well, hey, Liberty on paper, like probably should go undefeated. Should's a strong word. They got to play App State, which we'll talk about in a second. But like if Liberty does go undefeated, I think this is one of Andy Staples' takes to start the year. He's like, Liberty's going to go undefeated, but they're going to miss the college football playoff. You mentioned last year with them, call a spade, falling flat on their face against Oregon in the New Year's Six Bowl. How do you assess Liberty heading into this season?
Yeah, I think they're fascinating to watch. You look at their schedule in Conference USA compared to some of these other conferences, it's night and day when it comes to competitiveness. I mean, they have this App State game that's going to be a big-time matchup, but a lot of these other teams have conference games and rivalries and matchups throughout the season that are built like this, and this is Liberty's biggest game by far. People are calling this the Group of Five Super Bowl, and I think when you look at this Liberty team, they're undoubtedly going to – I have no doubt they're going to probably run the table, if not have just one loss to App State. I mean, they return the best quarterback, the best running back units, defensive line, offensive line. It's night and day. I think Jacksonville State's the only team in this conference who could maybe give them a fight. They don't play them this year. Maybe TJ Finley in Western Kentucky can maybe have a shootout with them. But I think when you look at this Liberty team, they're going to run the table. They're going to be dominant. The question is going to be if they are able to do that. Do they still make the cut just based on what they did last year and based on some of the robustness of this league? When we just talk about the Group of Five in general, I think Caden Salter's an excellent player. They have excellent players all over the place relative to their conference, but maybe some of these other teams who have better size matchups, better mismatches when it comes to playing and proving maybe that they can stand toe to toe with some Power Five teams might work in their favor versus Liberty's favor.
Did we mention Western Kentucky? We got a soft spot for the Hilltoppers on this show. Fighting Nick Breaks. I don't know if they're really going to be like a playoff team in that conversation, but are they someone where it's like, hey, just keep an eye on the Hilltoppers? You know, I don't know what their odds are actually to make the college football playoff, but I'm basically asking this out of bias for this show, out of bias for Nick Break, and this is totally a curveball. Like WKU, are they kind of a speed bump for some of the, like, how do you assess WKU? Because they got Bama the first game of the year in the Producer Bowl. Trey Annity is a Bama alum, and Nick Break is a WKU alum. I mean, I'm throwing you just a massive curveball here. I have done very little work on WKU. Any thoughts on the tops? Any thoughts on the Hilltoppers here in this one?
Well, my first thoughts, I know that's a place of affinity for Nick Break, but that's who I played in my last college football game in the Boca Raton Bowl, where Bailey Zappi broke Joe Burrow's touchdown record. They put it on us. They laid it on us in that game, and their offense continues to be able to play. I think their offense is going to be the key to them doing anything as far as making noise for that 12-team playoff. But you mentioned their opportunity in week one. I think when you look at these Power 5 matchups and these draws compared to the Group of 5, that's a very good opportunity where maybe if they stand toe-to-toe with an Alabama, play well, get some good momentum going. TJ Finley had an excellent season last year for Texas State. If he can carry that over to Western Kentucky, then maybe we see the Hilltoppers make their way in that conversation.
And I want to kind of jump around too, because you mentioned Texas State, and we're getting ready for this segment. And my guy, I want to put this up on the camera because, like, we got a Google Doc going. My guy just blessed me with all the G5 intel. Like, talk about doing your homework. Texas State's on that list for you, though. They're kind of on maybe a further shot to be a team that makes the college football player from the G5. But, I mean, it doesn't have to just be Texas State. I know there's other teams that you're high on. Other teams that are maybe not getting as much buzz right now to be that G5 rep, to be that 12 seed, maybe that you think deserve a little more attention as we jump into this first month of the season.
Yeah, my choice for this is Texas State. I think they have probably the 7th best odds out of all the Group of 5 teams, and I think they have the best value overall. They bring back G.J. Kinney, who was an amazing head coach who turned this program around completely last year. They had their first winning season in a long, long time. They bring Jordan McLeod, the Sun Belt Player of the Year from James Madison, to Texas State, and he's probably going to have an excellent season. Ismail Bani is the running back behind him, a versatile player who's kind of the Ashton Jeanty, I would say, of the Sun Belt Conference. And what I like the most about Texas State, other than returning a ton of starters, have an explosive offense. I was one of the best in the country last year, is their schedule and their path to make it to this playoff. You talk about their non-conference game against UTSA in week 2. In week 3 rather. That's going to be a huge matchup. They only lost to this team by 7 points last year, and that team doesn't have Frank Harris this year, and they have a lot of their returning players back for the Bobcats. And then they also have a great opportunity going up against Arizona State. It's kind of their Power 4 draw. If you had to pick any Power 4 team to play in the nation, they're probably in that mix when you talk about the Sun Devils. So I think they have a path to have an impressive-ish non-conference slate, and then when you get to their conference slate, the Sun Belt is the only conference in the entire college football FBS that still has divisions, and the West Division is a lot less stacked than that East Division where Texas State resides. They have 3 new head coaches over there. The only 2 teams that didn't make a bowl game last year in that West Conference, and I think when you look into Arkansas State and Louisiana, who beat this team last year, they all come to San Marcos this year. So I think, close your ears, App State fans, but I think this Texas State team is really dangerous. They could make it to this conference title game. They could win this conference, and I think if they have an undefeated team, they will quickly become a dark horse in that team that people maybe are looking at to be that 12 seed this year.
Dude, don't tell me that. Because I have App State as my G5 rep for the college football playoff. Bring back 68% production from last year's team that played for the Sun Belt Championship, fell short against Troy at Clemson week 2. I don't know what Clemson's going to be, but you imagine maybe they're, I mean, either way you slice it. Maybe let's say they pull off the upset against Georgia, which would be an upset, double digit underdog. and then they're riding that high. You come home, and who do you have but G5 rolling in there with App State? Or maybe you lose that game, you're licking your wounds, you're kind of discombobulated. I like the spot there for App State is all I'm going to say. We'll talk about that as being one on upset watch when it does arrive here. But man, you played for the Mountaineers. That's a school that's near and dear to your heart. What do you make of App State when it comes to their chances to be in the college football playoff?
I love their shot too, for sure. And you talk about them playing Clemson and just this team's pedigree against Power 5 opponents. I mean, it's been since 2017 and forward, this team, every single time they play a Power 5 opponent, it's a one-score game. You got a win over North Carolina. You got a win over South Carolina, Texas A&M, close loss to Miami, overtime loss to Penn State. This team comes to play, and they're going to be ready to play against Clemson. My biggest worry is getting through the gauntlet of the Sun Belt untouched. You have the Georgia Southern rivalry, which is one of those ones where you throw the records out the way, and it's just playing ball. You have Marshall, you have Coastal Carolina. They draw Louisiana, Lafayette on the other side. So it's going to be a tough road for them. You have that matchup against Liberty as well, but this is a team who lost a bunch of one-score games early in the season and really caught their rhythm in November on and made their way back to the Sun Belt title game. Joey Aguilar is one of the best quarterbacks in the country. Even talking about that Clemson game specifically, I like Joey Aguilar in that matchup over Cade Klubnik with just what he's able to do from a physicality standpoint, what he's proven in the past. So I think App State's in a good spot. The only question mark I think for them is up front. They have a lot of new faces on that offensive line. Coach Clark loves that unit. Sean Clark said it's a big athletic group, and he's an offensive line coach himself, so he can get that right. But other than that, the Mountaineers are probably looking poised to not only be in that 12 seed conversation, but have the respect nationally just based on what they've done in the past to separate themselves and hopefully go undefeated in that Sun Belt and maybe for the Mountaineers take it home as far as a playoff team.
Just got to keep the helmets in practice on the head. Just got to keep them right here, buckle the chin strap, and we just, maybe we don't do anything else with those if you're catching my drift. Now, Caden, I appreciate just all the intel, brother. We could not let you go without putting you on the spot here and saying, all right, Caden Smith, we're about to jump into week 1 of the college football season. We're going to talk a lot of G5 throughout the course of this season as it pertains to the college football playoff. If you had to pick today, you had to pick one horse, no pun intended, that you had to roll with here, who would that be?
I have to go with a horse, JD. I'm going with Boise State. I love App State, but I think either team making it out of the Sun Belt is just going to be too hard as far as beating up on each other. And I'm afraid the committee's not going to maybe take too close enough of a look at how competitive the Sun Belt is, how competitive the AAC is. I think those two conferences kind of cannibalize themselves throughout the season. And I think when you look at Boise State, I think they have an easy road as far as making it through their own conference schedule. You get Oregon in week 2, which maybe Oregon doesn't have everything all the way figured out. You can make that a close game, maybe get an upset win there. And I think, like I mentioned before, it's all in the quarterback position. This team has the best offensive and defensive line probably combined in the group of 5 level. They have the pedigree of going and playing Power 5 teams in the past, having some fond memories when it comes to the allure of making it. I think storylines do matter in this. I think the first year of the 12-team playoff, having a Boise State team return to that national stage is something maybe the committee considers, and they have all the pieces, I think, to go toe-to-toe and maybe get an upset win in this playoff. So give me Boise State right now. Fate of the universe on the line, I have to go with Boise State, unfortunately. But the Sun Belt, too, I think if you want to go with the pedigree of App State or the potential of Texas State, if either of those teams go undefeated, too, I think they have a great shot as well.
Dude, I just need, there's a certain part of my heart that just remembers, the old Boise State days, like Jared Zabransky, Ian Johnson, Kellen Moore, Austin, like those
Statue of Liberty, man.
Statue of Liberty. I'm like, it lives in my head rent free. But man, we're so fired up to keep doing this with you, man, throughout the course of this season. Again, Caden Smith, follow him on Twitter, just producing bangers on the Round Table YouTube channel. So Caden's here to stay. All right. So Caden, we appreciate you, brother. Gonna be a good time talking some G5 ball throughout the course of this season.
Appreciate you, JD.
Hey y'all, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.